All right, so welcome to another edition of Why I No Longer Get Riled Up About Police Brutality Videos. Now, if you saw the video that I made called Police Use of Force, What's the Standard? Then you should know already why I no longer get riled up about these videos. Obviously, they're not all the same, but usually the police officers are working within the confines of the law and the use of force policy of his department, and the public is just ignorant of it, and they're not comparing the officer's actions to what the law actually says. They're comparing the officer's actions to their opinion of how he ought to act. It's just one thing I just noticed, especially when it comes to law, is that there is way too much opinion and feeling and not enough facts. So if you want to determine whether or not an officer is justified in his use of force, the only way to legally determine that is to compare his actions to the law, not your feelings or how it looks to you. You're entitled to whatever opinion you have, but when you want to talk about law and lawfulness, that's the only standard there is. Now, if you feel as though there's a problem with the law, that's a different story, and whatever activism or activist whatever ways you want to go about to change this law, you have to approach them properly. Because if you have an issue with the behavior, but the behavior is within the confines of the law, it's completely pointless for you to cry racism and cry brutality. He's acting within the law. You have to deal with that law or that policy itself. And people don't seem to understand that. And honestly, I wonder if people even care. I think people like going off their emotions, and people, to be honest, I think people just kind of like being riled up. So there's a couple of things I want to show you here, and I'm going to show you that I found this out. I was looking for the whole Waffle House incident, and I was looking for surveillance footage. And hey, lo and behold, the police force, they held a press conference and they used some video. As you can see here, Alabama Waffle House arrest. Police justify force with video and witness testimony. So if you read this article, and I'll leave a link to it, if you read this article, it kind of gives you, there were two black witnesses who were there who said that the woman was out of hand, right? So, I mean, this kind of gives you a play-by-play of what happened. That police department actually went Facebook Live with a press conference, starting from the 911 call to, then they included surveillance footage, and then they took some questions afterwards. So they were really kind of giving context to the call, which, since they're officers, they probably felt like that's all they really needed to do. But what they really should have done in this video that they didn't do was they should have went over the use of force policy and explained why that type of force was appropriate for that level of resistance. That's what they should have done. So I'm gonna give you an example. I'm going to show you. It's my cursor. I'm going to show you this right here. Now, I cannot remember which police department I got this from, but let me see if I can make it any bigger. All right, so I'm just gonna go over this real quick, but the whole point is each police department has something like this, and each level of resistance, which is on the left, requires a certain amount of force. So if you look at the very bottom, the mere presence, the officer's response is the officer's perception is the mere presence. The officer's response is mere presence. The officer's notice it says officer's perception. It doesn't say the public's perception. It says this is how the officer is interpreting their level of resistance. The person is verbally resisting. Then the officer's response is to give verbal commands and to touch. So you can grab their arm and turn them around and say, hey, stop, or that sort of thing. If the person is passively resisting, now there's another use of force policy that I go over in my What's the Standard video, and that one gives you definitions. And this place here, I'm trying to get back to my browser. The Saralands Police Department enforcement guide or whatever. It gives some definitions. It doesn't really give a whole lot. Now the Las Vegas PD one gives you all kind of definitions and stuff, and it's really cool. They pretty much give you an explanation of what all these resistance levels mean. But generally, passive resistance is kind of like the officer says, put your hands behind your back. You say no. They say lay on the ground. You say no. Put your hands up. You say no, and you don't do it. And if the officer is trying to, let's say you're on the ground, or let's say you're sitting down and the officer tries to get you up, then you kind of make yourself heavy so that he can't pick you up. Or, let's say you're protesting and you have your arms intertwined with other people's arms, and the officer's trying to arrest you, and you don't let go, right? So that would be passive resistance. But look at this. The force required by that officer for passive resistance is pain compliance and takedowns. So they're going to grab you. They can put you down on the ground, or really throw you, because you're not going to go willingly. So they can throw you down to the ground, or they can use pain compliance, which, that is a very vague term depending on where the officer is, what district he's in, or what department he's in, rather. That will determine what exactly pain compliance means. Active physical resistance is pulling your hand away, or running, or you're acting more aggressive, you're more animated, but you're not trying to attack the officer. You're just more intent on not being arrested. So if you're doing that, this place, wherever I got this from, they can hit you. It says impact weapon, so they can use their baton. This is the other ones I've looked at actually has this up here, and this is assaultive resistance, aggregated physical. So this is when you're ready to fight the cop, and you fighting the cop. And then aggregated physical resistance is if you have a weapon, or if you're trying to kill a cop, or if it's possible that, see what it says, it's perception. If the officer perceives that you are trying to give him serious harm, then he can use deadly force. But people don't know this. People don't know that if you're passively resisting, that officers can take you down to the ground. And that's what happened in this video. The woman was passively resisting. She maybe went up to active resisting, but the officer took her down to the ground. People are like, he don't have to be that hard. He don't have to be that that rough with her. The thing that people don't realize is the officer is there to secure the arrest for whatever reason, whether you think it's fair or not. He's there to secure the arrest, and he's not doing his job if he doesn't, if that's what he's there for. So just because you feel as though the police shouldn't have been called on you, that has nothing to do with whether or not you need to comply with this arrest. Your method of fighting that kind of thing, if it's an injustice, is through the courts. You don't really you're not really in a position to just say, what are you here for? I'm going to, you're not going to take me. And then when the police get violent or aggressive, then you get mad. They're doing their job. So to me, that explains 90% of the police brutality. That right there, it just sums up 90% of them. It's the videos that float around. Then you have the officer shooting ones, which are a little different. But I'm going to get right into this, and I'm going to show you. First, I want to show you some of these articles that I found, and I want you to look at the see that here's the one person out of all of the comments I've ever seen. There's only one person who actually asked for the use of force policy. And I don't know if they found it or not, but every time I follow a link to Twitter, I don't like it, so I didn't go there. Saraland officers dragged for using excessive force to arrest black woman. This is the one that this is one of the ones I looked at. It's police use video witness testimony. But I want you to see, there's another one. I want you to see the tone of the articles. So there's a petition to suspend the officers. Police justify use of force on woman by saying I don't know, I didn't read that. But some of the ones I looked at, oh, okay, here's one. Shocking video of police throwing black woman to the floor. See, what you got to realize is they're very intentional in the way that they word these things. Why do they have to put in that she's black? Does it matter if she's black or not? If the officer's actions are right or wrong, does it matter if the suspect or the woman is black or not? It doesn't. But they throw that in there to get you riled up. All right, so let's look at the Facebook Live video. We're going to look at the Facebook Live video, and there's a lot of deadness, you know, before this point of them setting up and waiting for cameras or guests or things like that. So we're going to start at the 911 call, then we're going to watch some of the surveillance video, and then I'm going to show you we're going to go over the cell phone video of the woman that her friend took of her.
Profanity, as reported by witnesses. At approximately 2:30 Sunday morning, April 22nd, Saraland Police Dispatch received the following call.
Ma'am, I am at the Waffle House in Saraland, Walmart 1204 Industrial Parkway. I was told to call.
Uh-oh, laggy interneting. Laggy internet, come on. Well,
Called by one of my managers that they have customers in here. They came in with alcohol and they told them that they couldn't drink it and they are not listening. They're drunk and disorderly, and I was told to call them on that.
Alrighty, they're still inside?
Yes, ma'am.
White, male, female?
There's black and 2 females and a male.
Alright, and your name?
Allie.
Okay, I'll just call you up there.
Thank you.
now some people may make a big deal out of the woman saying that there are 2 black females and a male, but she was specifically asked, the 911 operator asked if they were white, and the person said no. It's kind of normal for them to give a description, but you know, people just kind of latch on to anything and start to complain. If we look at some of these comments, you'll see people kind of complaining about silly stuff like that.
All right.
We did obtain video from cameras located at the Waffle House, and I'm going to show you several clips. They have different angles, and I'll explain a little bit about what goes on in each video. Sorry, let me get the lights. If it goes any larger, it's going to get very grainy.
Okay.
Okay, this first clip you can see Miss Adams in the white shirt come in. Miss Clemens follows after her. A male subject we have not identified did come in before them and entered the restroom. After they sit down, the male subject does come out and join them at the table. After a few minutes of sitting at the table, the situation escalates between the patrons at that table and the employees.
So from right here, now this is just giving context to what happened. This doesn't automatically mean or that the officers should have been rough with her, or that they should not have been rough with her. This is just giving context to the situation. Right away you see her getting upset at allegedly arguing over having to being charged 50 cents to use plastic utensils. I mean, that's what the story is. That's what the official story is. But you can see here, as you watch the video, you can see the woman getting upset and gesturing. She's upset for some reason. Now, my purpose of showing this isn't to try to blame anyone here. It's just, like I said,
The communication that happens during this altercation is going to be gone over by Detective Mims when he speaks to you about the witness statements we obtained. At this point, the employees have asked them to leave the establishment, which the first female and gentleman does.
See, now, here's the thing. Here's the thing about law. If you're asked to leave a business establishment, at this point, you have to leave. This is what happened with the Starbucks thing. Whether or not you feel as though you're justified, whether or not you think it's right, whether or not it makes sense to you or not, once you're asked to leave, you have to leave, or you're doing what is called defiant trespassing. So again, it's about law or facts over feelings. It has nothing to do with the law. It has nothing to do with how you feel about it. This is what the law says. The method, the way that you fight this is through court. So I just want to say right here, this right here is disorderly conduct because they were asked to leave and they're not leaving. So this is disorderly conduct. You may not agree with that, but this is what the law says, and that's what they end up being arrested for. Now, the statements that the police officers took by the staff here, I don't know if one of the witnesses actually said this, but from the staff, they were saying that she was cursing at them. She was calling them B's and H's and saying, you don't know if I got a gun on me. I don't know if she said that or not. I'm just telling you, this is kind of what's, I guess, happening at this point. This is what they're talking about. You may look at this and say, well, she has a right to express her opinion. No one has a right to talk to her like that, or whatever you feel like, maybe you feel as though the people that work there were wrong. Maybe you feel like this woman is simply just speaking her mind. But once you're asked to leave a business establishment, you have to leave by law. So all of this is pretty pointless, and this is what some people on Facebook have said. Hold on, let me check, make sure I'm still recording. All right, so this is what some people on Facebook have said. Like, if you're in a business establishment that doesn't want to treat you the way you feel like you should be treated, just go somewhere else. Don't spend your money there. You may think, well, no, I'm going to demand respect, or they're going to, respect me or whatever. But why would you want to give your money to someone that you feel like disrespects you? This is a level of power that you have, especially as a black person who feels as though they get discriminated against. This is a level of power and control that you have. If you feel this way about this establishment, do not go there. Go somewhere else. Give someone else your money, someone who's going to treat you right. But no, we won't do that. We'll sit there and argue and complain about a person and then still want to eat there. Now, at this point, whether this woman is wrong or right or whatever, why would you want to eat somewhere where you have a problem with the staff that's serving your food? Think about that. You really want someone serving your food that you just ticked off? Like, the power that she has in this situation is to walk out and refuse to ever come there again and spend her money somewhere else. The problem is, too many of y'all don't think that's power. You think what she's doing now is power. What she's doing now is weakness. It's a lack of self-control. So this is weakness, and it leads to her being arrested because she has no self-control. Power would be, there's 3 of us here. You are not getting our money for the food, and you're not getting a tip from us. We're going to go somewhere else. We may even spread the word about how terrible this place is. But I'm not going to sit there, like sitting there and arguing with the person changes nothing. Especially if you've been asked to leave. I mean, what does she benefit from this? She's not going to get no money from this. She's not. By the way, they said there was 2 black witnesses. I wonder if he's one of them. There's a black guy right there. Well, he's leaving, so maybe it's someone else. She's still not leaving. They were asked to leave, and they're still there.
And again, I'm going to show you a couple different angles, but we're going to continue to watch this. You
Now,
see the
I'm going to
first
stop it here
officer
and switch
does
to the
arrive.
cell phone video, because for the rest of the video that she shows, you can't really see what they're doing. You'll just see kind of part of the officer. So you can't really see what they're doing. So I'm going to switch to this one here in a second that our homegirl took. But let's look at some of the comments. Let's look at some of the comments of this video. You know, good job. What's your color matter? Alcohol was consumed before she came in. And, you know, and look at her, just look like a fool, but she is so in. So, of course, people are going to start arguing in the comments and that sort of stuff. See, now there's some people saying, never mind the drinks, they were clearly acting out. See, y'all get mad about a Facebook video without seeing the rest. And that is one of the main reasons why I no longer get riled up about police videos. I've finally learned that the context actually means something. We're going to get to the part of the actual police use of force in a second. So some people were saying she didn't have drinks. The 911 caller said they had drinks, and I don't see any drinks in her hand. You know, some people were saying she's ghetto. It's just, you know how people argue. So anyway, let's go to this video here to finish this out.
You haven't did nothing. You haven't did nothing too. Yeah, she asked him what's corporate number.
Because the only thing I asked him was for corporate number.
That's the only thing she asked
I
him.
was going to go over there and get the card from them.
I heard the F-bomb and everything else.
No, because Goldie was sitting here talking crazy to me.
All right, so at this point, she is, let's look at our use of force continuum. At this point, she is verbally resistant. You know, I'm not getting up. I didn't do anything. So right now, the officer is using verbal commands and he's using touch. He's not a judge. Officers are not judges. So it's not his place to determine whether or not this person, the legal aspect of it. They were asked to leave, and she needs to leave. That's what the law says. That's what the right that businesses have. If you go into their establishment and they ask you to leave, then you have to leave, or you're defiantly trespassing. So right now, she's being verbally resistant, and he's using verbal commands and touch.
No, but that's not what you're going to do to me. You're not going to grab on me like that, no.
Come on, Kiki, let's just go outside.
Please talk to you separately, because he just come here and just grabbed on me like for no reason. I was saying I was going.
Yeah.
Notice he's being fairly gentle here. Now, you may say, yo, get your hands off of her, or you don't have a right to touch her. He's there to get her out of the building. That his job is to get her out of that building. So, and I guess at this point, arrest her. So she's not in a position to say what he is or is not going to do to her. That's just not how law enforcement works. He's a law enforcement officer. He's going to enforce the law. If you have an issue with the way this is being handled, you file the appropriate court papers and you handle it this way. Doing what she's doing now does not change anything. She's about to start actively resisting. So again, actively resisting, looking at the use of force continuum. Okay, so she's verbally resistant, and then she's not getting up when he tells her to and stuff. So now she's here. Now she's here. And it may not seem like much of a difference to you, but this is a continuum. He's there to secure the arrest. You don't have a right to tell him no. Can you imagine if your officer sent out to arrest someone and then the officers come back and be like, well, I didn't arrest them because they said that they didn't really do it. Do you really think that would be a good officer? Do you really think he'll keep a job like that? That's not how things work. So now she's passively resisting. She's refusing to get up, and she's, you know, you're not going to grab me, stop grabbing me, that sort of thing. At this level, according to this, I don't know where I got this from. I wish I could remember which area, which place I got this from. But just about all of them we see, if we look at the LVPD thing, when a person is passively resisting, you can take them down to the floor and you can use pain compliance. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you that. So I got to find what city I got this from. I'm going to show you as soon as I find it. I'm going to show you the Las Vegas Police Department use of force. Oh, where is it? I might see if I can find it. Use. This one's very useful. That's why I really want to show this. All right, so here's the LVPD use of force policy. This is so much more detailed than the one for the place where she lives at. But I just want to show you this graph. I just want to show you the graph, this here, and it gives more detail on what the different levels of resistance actually means. Right? So this here is just like the other one. It gives you the level of resistance, and then the words inside each bar tells you the actions that the officer is permitted to use to secure the arrest. Before I do that, I want to read the definitions, which is really short. All right, here you go right here. Levels of resistance. I'm just going to read these definitions here. A compliant person. A person contacted by an officer who acknowledges direction or lawful orders given and offers no passive, active, aggressive, or aggravated aggressive resistance. So that's this first one here. So when a person is compliant, an officer will use presence, he will use verbal commands, he will use empty hand tactics, aka escorts, and handcuffs, other restraints. As an escort is kind of like them taking your hands to taking the arm to escort you, to turn you around or something like that. All right, so let's go to the next one. Passive resistance. Passive resistance is the subject is not complying with an officer's commands and is uncooperative, but is taking only minimal physical action to prevent an officer from placing the subject in custody and taking control. Examples include standing stationary and not moving upon lawful direction, falling limply and refusing to use their power to move, becoming dead weight, holding onto a fixed object, or locking arms to another during a protest or demonstration. So even here you see in the Las Vegas PD, somewhere totally different. They still have the same kind of use of force continuum or transition. And it tells you right here what they can do. So my whole point is, it's not just a one place thing. Like, this is what police officers everywhere, they have an actual standard that they need to comply to. So if you have an issue with the use of force that an officer is using, the first thing you need to do is compare it to the use of force model to see if they're within the law. The next thing is, if you have an issue with that law, then stop calling everything racism and actually go try to change the law or the policy. The problem is, nobody knows this stuff, and it's out there. Nobody tries to find out. Everyone wants to be the judge of what's right or wrong, and they want to act off of that instead of going by what the law actually says. So, like I said here, it says, empty hand tactics, takedowns, and escorts. So you can take somebody down to the ground to secure an arrest if they're not complying, but they're not really doing much. They're just simply not moving when you want them to. Now, other places can be a little different. Other places can have some of this stuff can be over here. Like you see for this one, it says K9 on a leash. Some places, maybe it'll be here. Maybe this one won't be on here. It'll be higher up. Maybe this won't be here, but it'll be over here. Like it's so they're not completely all 100% the same, but generally they have the same type of guidelines. All right. So active resistance. Why can't I get this to move over? I can never get this to move over. All right. Active resistance. The subject's verbal or physical actions are intended to prevent an officer from placing the subject in custody and taking control, but are not directed at harming the officer. Examples include walking or running away, breaking the officer's grip. So if a person is actively resisting, now these top three involve vehicles. So you don't, these involve vehicles. So officer presence, verbal communications, empty hand tactics, takedowns, and escorts. So again, they can take you down to the ground, they can escort you, handcuffs, other restraints, baton. So if you're actively resisting and you're pulling your arms away from the officer and you're not going to take me and all of that stuff, and you're not attacking the officer, but you're really putting up a fight, then they can pull out their baton. It says as an escort tool, so he can't strike you yet. That's over at the aggravated aggressive. He can't strike you yet, but he can pull it out. But if you're being that difficult, they can actually go get their dog. I mean, how many of y'all even know that? I didn't know that until reading this myself. So I'm going to stop there. The rest of them are kind of like when you're fighting a cop, and this woman didn't fight the cop, so there's no need to go there. Make sure I'm still recording. Yep. All right. So, all right. So this is, I'm going to read this one paragraph and then we're going to get back to the video. This is the state of Alabama's enforcement use of force policy, right? Now, state police may be different from the Saraland, Alabama's police department. This is just what I was able to find. So take this with a grain of salt. Maybe slightly different. But I just want to read this here. Now this is okay. You see here, they're non-lethal policy. In a majority of cases, some level of physical force will be necessary to effect an arrest or to protect others. That amount of physical force may be as low as placing a hand on the subject's shoulder or arm and directing that subject to place his hands behind his back for handcuffing. Depending on the level of resistance offered, the agent may use techniques that may escalate to physically pinning the subject to respond to techniques that influence behavior by eliciting pain in order to apply handcuffs using hand lane strikes, OC spraying, which is pepper spray, or even the use of a firearm. If the resistance is offered is severe, agents are to use only the force necessary to complete the arrest. So you tell me, when you watch this video, you tell me if they use force that is unnecessary to secure the arrest, or did they use force necessary to secure the arrest? Because they didn't do anything crazy to her, at least not yet. Now, to be fair, that part of the video is just starting. We're going to get to that. But notice what it says here. It says, depending on the level of resistance offered, the agent may use techniques that may escalate to physically pinning the subject, to respond to techniques that influence behavior by eliciting pain. So they can, in order to apply handcuffs, using hand and leg strikes and OC spray. So if the person is, depending on the level of resistance, they can actually hit you. Mind you, it doesn't say when the person attacks you. It says the level of resistance. So now, she doesn't do it, but if she was to be on that ground thrashing and get off me and not necessarily attacking them, but being very wild, then they could actually hit her. Now, thankfully, she didn't do that and they didn't hit her, but y'all got to understand what the law actually says. All right, so let's get back to the video.
He ain't called the police in.
You haven't did nothing. I haven't did nothing too. Yeah, she asked him what's corporate number.
Because the only thing I asked him was for corporate number.
That's the only thing she asked
I
him.
was going to go over there and get the card from them.
Do you really think that all the time she was there talking, the only thing she asked for was corporate number? Because you can look up corporate's number, but that's I digress.
I heard the F-bomb and everything.
No, because Goldie was sitting here talking crazy to me. No, but that's not what you're gonna do to me. You're not gonna grab on me like that. No.
Come on, Kiki. Let's just go outside.
Please talk to you separately. Because he just come here and just grabbed on me like for no reason. I was saying I was going.
Yes.
So now, a lot of people would probably have a problem with this because he's grabbing her. Is he being rough or excessive with her? No. Officers are not, you are not in a position to argue or debate with an officer who's there to arrest you. They're there to secure the arrest, not to negotiate. So let's look at the use of force continuum. So she's been verbally resistive. She's been saying, I haven't done anything. You're not going to tell you anything. What did I do? Now, she's kind of being passively resistive because he's trying to get her to get up. I don't think she may not, from the video, she probably doesn't go past here. You may have an argument for this, like a lower end of this one, but generally she's pretty passive. She's just not listening. So, pain compliance and takedowns. So, they're going to take her down to the ground because she's passively resisting. This is completely within the confines of the law. Where is the excessive force? She's passively resisting. They're going to take her down to the ground.
See what I see they was acting what they know. Why you not pushing her? She's not doing nothing. Like, what are y'all doing?
Now, even at this point, they're not being very rough with her. You may think that they are, but this is not rough at all. They're not putting no body weight on her, which they tend to like to do, and that hurts. They're not putting no body weight on her, and you'll see they're going to babysit this whole thing.
No, y'all ain't really doing stuff to me. What are you doing?
Man, not to break your arm. That's what I'm about to do.
You have to break her arm?
Go ahead and put resisting.
Like, what are y'all doing?
No, I'm not.
Y'all got her computers out of.
All right, so two things here. One, his comment about breaking her arm. Now, in the press conference, which I'll leave a link to, what the spokesman for the police said was that what he was saying is kind of like cause and effect. Kind of like your arm's going to break if you don't stop. Like, I'm trying to arrest you and you're resisting, so it's going to break. Sort of like, imagine if you're getting your hair cut and you fall asleep in the barber's chair, right? And your head goes, you know, and your barber says to you like, yo, I'm going to mess your hair up. Now, is he threatening you to mess your hair up? No, he's saying this is going to be the result if you keep acting the way you're acting. So the officer, that's what was said that the officer, what he meant. You can take that however way you want it. From the actions here, if he wanted to break her arm, then he could have broke her arm. So she did nothing to prevent him from breaking her arm. So if he wanted to break her arm, then he could have broken her arm. So their explanation of why he said what he said makes sense to me. It may not make sense to you. It don't have to. Who cares? I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to compare their actions to the use of force continuum. And as of now, they haven't broken it. The other thing is that her clothes are coming undone. And they're blaming the officers. Now, nobody told her to come out the house wearing something like that, right? Now, of course, she didn't leave the house expecting to be thrown on the ground, like, obviously. But she's come out the house wearing like nothing. Like, look at what she's wearing. So, I don't know. What do you think is going to happen? Every step of the way up to this point, she's had the power to prevent this. All she had to do was comply. She had the power to not get arrested. All she had to do was leave that restaurant. She could have left that restaurant, took her money elsewhere, and looked up corporate later, and then gave them her complaint. She could have even if she wanted to get her little 2 pieces of word, her 2 cents in, she could have gave her 2 cents and then left. She chose not to. She had control over this. While she was sitting in the chair, she had control over this. She doesn't have to be on the ground with her boobs out. This is her choice. She chose to resist, and this is the consequences of her choice. Just like her being arrested in general is a consequence of her choice to get rowdy. Now, she could have got rowdy and left. She chose not to get rowdy and left. She chose to get rowdy, leave, and come back. Therefore, this is the consequence of her action. I saw somebody on Facebook comment and saying like, oh, they bashed her head on the ground. And I mean, come on, like, does this look like a violent arrest to you? This is not a violent arrest. Even if you think it's like, see, the problem is y'all keep thinking that she's just talking. Therefore, what are they supposed to do? Like, if you're an officer and you're responding somewhere to arrest someone and you're like, okay, put your hands behind your back. And they say, well, no, I didn't do anything. What are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and, well, because this and this and this, and come on. See, what do you think? Do you think they're going to respect your authority if you do that? Do you think they're more likely to comply, or they're going to be more likely to complain and resist if you do that? Put yourself in their shoes. Use common sense. If you're there to secure an arrest, you need to secure an arrest. You have much more important things going on rather than somebody being rowdy inside of a Waffle House. There are plenty of other things that could be going on. You need to get this done and over with. Okay, so she was saying that he's not telling me what I'm doing. You're resisting. You know what you're doing. The other thing is they don't have to tell you what they're doing. Like they're not going to tell you until you're secure. That's when they'll talk to you, when you're secure. Right now, you're not secure. Now, this clip now right here with him putting his hand on her neck. You could make an argument for this, like, whoa, he shouldn't have done that. However, he doesn't squeeze her neck. He doesn't choke her. He puts his arm there. Oh, I can't believe I just did that.
Like, what are y'all doing? No,
y'all are really doing stuff to me. What are you doing?
Man, not to break your arm. That's what I'm about to do.
You got to break her arm?
Man, go ahead and quit resisting.
Like, what are y'all doing?
No, I'm not.
Y'all got her computers out and everything.
What's going on?
Right now, you can put
No, I'm trying to understand what's going on.
Y'all ain't even talking about why she being on her leg.
Y'all not even telling me what I'm doing.
Like, why you
Okay, so first, you notice he first put his arm around her neck. I just missed it.
Y'all not even telling me what I'm doing.
You notice he put his hand around her neck. Some use of force models allow for chokeholds. They call it something else, but some use of force model calls for chokeholds at different levels of resistance. And this probably was an instinctive thing, which is why he did it and then he stopped. There's probably an instinctive response on his part. Notice he did it and then he took his hands. Notice he did it and then he stopped. Now he has, I don't know if he has her neck or her jaw, either one. But you know, people have an issue with him having her grabbing her like that. Maybe this is inappropriate. Maybe this is wrong, but he doesn't choke her. Again, he has it there for a second. Okay, he has it there for longer than a second, and she takes it off, and he doesn't do it again. So if his intent was to actually hurt her or choke her or whatever, he would have been much more aggressive with it. But maybe that's inappropriate. I don't know. But again, if it is inappropriate, it will be decided by what the use of force continuum says, not by what your opinion is.
What am I doing wrong? What did I do wrong? Y'all haven't told me anything that I did wrong. Y'all haven't told me anything that I did wrong.
Y'all got her hand behind her back.
Right. I don't have anything.
You want to come fix her clothes?
No, y'all fix it. Y'all got it.
And then they asked like, do you want to fix her clothes? So, I mean, the whole idea that they were just out for blood or this is just a joke. Police officers throw women to the floor during Waffle House arrest. I mean, you could say that they did. And you could say that they did, but they were within the use of force continuum by doing so. So even if you insist that she was only here, she was only passively resisting, what do you see for officer's response? You see takedowns. You see pain compliance. So, okay, so in this use of force model, you see holds up here. Now, this is for people that are fighting. Strikes or hold. Some use of force models, holds may be down here for active resistance. So that's probably why, that will be my guess, why that officer instinctively, in my opinion, instinctively grabbed her, put his arm around her neck. But then he realized, well, she's just a woman and she's not really fighting back. So he stopped. But again, maybe him putting his hand around her neck is inappropriate, and maybe he'll be disciplined for it. Who knows? But the whole takedown thing, and the whole takedown thing is they're doing their job. All she had to do was listen. In terms of her clothes, I mean, to me, it's like she really wasn't really. To me, it was like she was wearing almost the bare minimum what you would wear to go out to a club. I mean, people do worse, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't. To me, it's like, oh, well, you wearing something where it's like, just looking at it, it's like, yo, if I just tug on it, then everything will just pop out. And that's what happened. So, but the whole point is, there is nothing here to see. There is nothing here to see. There was no step of the way where they were outside of the use of force continuum. And far too many times, I see these videos talking about use of force, and it's an ignorant fool who's not complying. And the police escalate the use of force because they are resisting. You may say she wasn't resisting. She was resisting. I just showed you I showed you what the police officers literally are trained. That's literally what they're trained to go by. So the level of force that they use has to be higher than the level of resistance, or you'll never arrest nobody. It's common sense. So they're always going to use more force than resistance. It's just common sense. How else can you arrest anyone? Y'all got to stop being riled up about stuff. Y'all got to stop defending every idiot that wants to act like a fool out in public. It just kind of blows my mind how people will defend any kind of bad behavior. And you're treating her like she's helpless. This woman was not helpless. She didn't have to be out there acting a fool. She did not have to eat there. She could have went somewhere else once she got upset, like they've started to do. She could have decided to leave, come back like she did, and then said her 2 cents, and then left again before the cops came. That's all they had to do. She wanted to sit there and argue. And then this is the problem I have. People do stuff like that, and then when they get in trouble, they act like victims. And the black community gets behind them like they're victims. She's not a victim. She's an idiot. Right? She's an idiot. And then she'll go somewhere else and do the same exact thing. And then y'all will get behind her when she doesn't have any self-control. She had the power to prevent all of that from happening. So it's like, this is why I don't understand. Like, y'all treat black people like they're helpless, like they can't control themselves. Like, you completely ignore her role in this situation. So, just to wrap it up, that's another reason why I don't get riled up about police quote-unquote brutality videos. Most of them are nonsense. Some of them are pretty rough. Most of them are nonsense.